I'm Alexandra, Alex Mitchell, 32 years old, standing in my $6 million Tuscan villa. The Italian countryside stretches before me, vineyards bathed in golden sunset light on what should be the happiest day of my life. Instead, I stare at the empty chairs in the front row where my parents should be. They chose my sister Stephanie's wedding in Tulsa over mine. But as I looked at my husband Thomas and the intimate gathering of true friends surrounding us, I realized this was only the beginning of a story that would shake my family to its core. Before I dive into this roller coaster of family drama, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to stand up for yourself against family who couldn't see your worth. Trust me, what happened after my Tuscan wedding will show you exactly why building your own happiness is the ultimate revenge. Growing up in suburban Chicago, I always knew where I stood in the family hierarchy. My sister, Stephanie, 3 years younger than me, was unquestionably the golden child. I wasn't just second place, I was barely in the race. Our childhood photos tell the story better than words ever could. Stephanie's birthday parties were extravagant affairs with professional planners, custom cakes, and dozens of guests. My parents spared no expense for their precious youngest daughter. My birthdays, however, were afterthoughts if they were remembered at all. When I turned 16, my parents forgot entirely because Stephanie had a dance recital the same weekend. I blew out candles on a grocery store cupcake in my bedroom while they took her out for a celebration dinner after her performance. Alex just doesn't need as much attention, my mother would say to relatives. She's so independent. What she meant was, I had learned not to ask for anything because disappointment hurts less when you don't hope in the first place. School events followed the same pattern. My parents attended every single one of Stephanie's performances, competitions, and parent-teacher conferences. For me, they made it to maybe 1 in 5 events, always with a ready excuse. When I won the state debate championship my senior year, neither parent showed up because Stephanie had a mild cold. When I graduated valedictorian, they arrived late and left early because Stephanie was bored. Even family vacations revolved around Stephanie's preferences. She hated the beach, so we never went, despite my love of the ocean. She wanted Disney World 3 years in a row, so that's where we went. My suggestion to visit Washington, D.C. for its museums and history was dismissed as too educational to be fun. Despite the lack of parental support, or perhaps because of it, I threw myself into academic achievement. I won a full scholarship to Northwestern University, graduated summa cum laude, and landed a prestigious position at a global investment firm. While Stephanie dropped out of college after 2 semesters to find herself, I built a career that allowed me complete financial independence by 27. It was at a finance conference in New York that I met Thomas Reynolds. I was presenting a panel on emerging markets. He was in the audience, the founder of a successful tech startup that had just been valued at $300 million. Our eyes met during the Q&A session, and the chemistry was immediate. Your analysis of Southeast Asian markets was spot on, he told me at the networking reception afterward. Most people miss the cultural nuances that drive consumer behavior there. Thomas wasn't just handsome with his dark hair and piercing blue eyes. He was brilliant, thoughtful, and refreshingly direct. After exchanging business cards, we ended up talking until the venue closed. He asked for my number, and I gave it without hesitation, something completely out of character for cautious, professional Alexandra Mitchell. Our relationship progressed with the same efficiency that characterized our careers. Within 3 months, we were seeing each other every weekend despite living in different cities. At 6 months, Thomas suggested I consider opportunities in San Francisco, where his company was headquartered. By our 1-year anniversary, we were living together in a beautiful home overlooking the bay. The proposal came during a surprise trip to Lake Como, Italy. Thomas had arranged a private boat tour at sunset, and as the Alpine mountains reflected in the pristine waters, he dropped to one knee. "Alex, you're the most extraordinary woman I've ever met," he said, opening a box with a stunning emerald-cut diamond. "You've never settled for second best in your career, and I promise you'll never be second best with me. Will you marry me?" I said yes through tears of joy. For once in my life, I felt chosen. First choice, the priority. We spent the evening excitedly planning our future together, including where we might want to get married. Both of us had fallen in love with Italy, and the idea of a Tuscan wedding emerged as our dream. When we called my parents to share the news, their reaction was characteristically lukewarm. "That's nice, dear," my mother said. "A bit fast, maybe? And Italy sounds expensive and complicated. Wouldn't a nice local venue be more practical?" My father barely spoke. except to ask about Thomas's company's latest valuation, as if assessing whether my fiancé was financially worthy rather than congratulating us. Still, I pushed down my disappointment. This was my moment, and I refused to let their tepid response diminish it. Thomas squeezed my hand supportively throughout the call, and I knew then that he understood exactly what I'd been dealing with my entire life. They'll come around, he assured me afterward, and if they don't, we'll have the wedding of our dreams anyway. I had no idea then just how prophetic and necessary his words would become. After researching various regions in Italy, Thomas and I settled on Tuscany for our wedding. The rolling hills, cypress trees, and centuries-old villas spoke to exactly the intimate, romantic celebration we envisioned. We spent weeks comparing venues before selecting a stunning historic property near Siena. June 15th, I told the wedding planner after checking historical weather patterns. Perfect temperatures, low chance of rain, and the lavender fields will be in bloom. We placed deposits on the venue, contacted caterers, and began assembling our dream team of vendors. I created a wedding website with all the details, sent out save the date cards, and officially informed my family of our plans 6 months in advance. June 15th in Tuscany, I told my parents during a Sunday phone call, "We've booked the flights for you and reserved a beautiful suite at the property. All you'll need to do is show up." "That's so far away, Alexandra," my mother complained. "And in another country? It's not very considerate to your grandparents who can't travel that far." "We're having a small reception in San Francisco after we return," I explained patiently. "Everyone who can't make it to Italy will be included then." My father grumbled about the inconvenience, but eventually said they'd mark their calendars. Not exactly the enthusiastic response I'd hoped for, but it was something. Exactly 1 month later, my sister Stephanie called me, bubbling with excitement. "I'm engaged," she shrieked. "Brad proposed last night at that new rooftop restaurant downtown. You have to see the ring. It's absolutely massive." I congratulated her sincerely, genuinely happy that my sister had found someone. Brad Williams seemed like a decent guy from the few times I'd met him. Stable job and insurance, nice family, treated Stephanie well. They'd been dating about 8 months. "We need to start planning right away," Stephanie continued. "June is the perfect month for a wedding, don't you think?" A small alarm bell rang in my head, but I dismissed it. Surely she didn't mean. My parents insisted on hosting a family dinner to celebrate Stephanie's engagement the following weekend. Thomas and I flew in from San Francisco, and the evening started pleasantly enough with champagne toasts and appetizers. Then came the bombshell. "We've booked the country club for June 15th, Stephanie announced. It's the only Saturday in June they had available, and June is absolutely the only month that works for my vision. The table fell silent. Thomas's hand found mine under the table and squeezed gently. "Stephanie," I said carefully, "that's our wedding date. In Italy. You know this." She blinked innocently. "Is it? I completely forgot. But you can change yours, right? We've already put down non-refundable deposits." "So have we," Thomas interjected calmly. "Quite substantial ones, actually. Our save the dates have already gone out to guests." My mother jumped in immediately. "But Alex, your sister's wedding needs to be here where family can attend. Not everyone can afford to jet off to Europe on a whim." "It's not a whim," I said, feeling my temper rising. "We set this date 6 months ago. We told everyone. It's on the family calendar." "Well, we can't have 2 weddings on the same day," my father declared. "One of you needs to change." "Stephanie should change hers," I said firmly. "We set our date first, our deposits are paid, and our guests have been notified." What followed was one of the most heated arguments I'd ever had with my family. My parents both took Stephanie's side without hesitation. Thomas tried to offer reasonable compromises. We could help Stephanie find another venue with an opening on a different date, even cover any fees for changing, but they weren't interested. "You've always been so selfish, Alex," Stephanie said, tears forming in her eyes right on cue. "You knew June was my dream wedding month. You've always tried to steal my spotlight. First with your fancy job and rich fiancé, and now this." "That's not fair," I protested. "How could I possibly know June was your dream month when you weren't even engaged when we set our date?" My mother patted Stephanie's hand consolingly. "Alex, your sister has had her heart set on a June wedding since she was a little girl. You know how sentimental she is." I felt like I was taking crazy pills. There had never been any mention of Stephanie's supposed June wedding dreams before this moment. The argument escalated until my father delivered the ultimatum. "Alexandra, if you don't change your date, we won't be attending your wedding in Italy. That's final." The room went silent. Even Stephanie looked surprised at how far they were willing to go. Thomas and I exchanged glances. Without a word, we both stood up. "Then I'm sorry you'll miss it," I said quietly. "Our date stands." As we collected our coats to leave, my mother tried one last emotional appeal. "Alex, please. Family should come first." "I agree completely," I replied. "That's why I'm so disappointed in all of you right now." In the rental car driving back to our hotel, I finally broke down. Thomas pulled over and held me while I sobbed. "They were never going to choose me," I cried. "Not once in my entire life." "Then we'll choose each other," Thomas promised. "Every single day for the rest of our lives. And we'll build something so beautiful they'll regret not being part of it." I didn't know then how right he would be. The weeks following the disastrous family dinner brought even more painful revelations. My cousin Jamie called, concerned about the competing wedding situation. During our conversation, she inadvertently let slip that my parents had given Stephanie a check for $50,000 to help with her wedding expenses. "They're being so generous with both of you," she said. "Though I guess your contribution was probably different since you and Thomas are doing well financially." I didn't have the heart to tell her that my parents hadn't offered us a single dollar. Not for the wedding, not for college, not for anything substantial in my adult life. When I graduated from Northwestern, they gave me a $100 gift card to Bed Bath & Beyond. Meanwhile, they had paid for Stephanie's entire college experience. Tuition, apartment, car, spending money before she dropped out. When I confronted my mother about the discrepancy, her response was infuriatingly predictable. "Stephanie needs more help than you do," she explained, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "You've always been self-sufficient, and Thomas is certainly capable of covering wedding costs. Your sister and Brad are just starting out." The fact that Stephanie had been just starting out for nearly a decade while bouncing between jobs didn't seem to factor into their logic. That night, Thomas found me staring at our wedding budget spreadsheet, trying to cut corners to keep costs reasonable. Though we were fortunate enough to afford a beautiful wedding, I had always been financially responsible and couldn't shake the habits of careful budgeting. "What would you think about buying property in Tuscany instead of just renting a venue?" he asked, sliding onto the couch beside me. I looked up, confused. "What do you mean?" "I've been thinking," he continued. "We both fell in love with Italy. We've talked about wanting a place in Europe eventually. What if we accelerate that timeline and buy a place we can use for the wedding and then keep as our vacation home?" The idea was simultaneously outrageous and brilliant. We'd discussed having a second home someday, but I'd always assumed it would be years in the future. "Is that even possible?" I asked. Thomas smiled. "I've already reached out to a real estate agent who specializes in luxury properties in Tuscany. She sent over some initial listings. Want to see?" 2 weeks later, we were on a plane to Florence. Our real estate agent, Francesca, had arranged viewings of 5 properties throughout the Tuscan countryside. The first 3 were beautiful but didn't quite capture what we were looking for. The 4th property, however, took our breath away the moment we drove through the gates. Situated on 20 acres of land with its own vineyard and olive grove, the 17th century villa had been meticulously restored with the perfect balance of historic charm and modern amenities. 7 bedrooms, 6 bathrooms, a chef's kitchen, wine cellar, pool overlooking the hills, and a separate guest house. "It's perfect," I whispered to Thomas as we stood on the terrace watching the sunset paint the hills in gold and amber. "The asking price is €6 million, Francesca informed us, but the owners are motivated sellers. They've relocated to London permanently and are eager to close." Thomas and I exchanged glances. It was significantly more than we'd initially discussed, but sometimes when something is right, you know it. After thorough inspection and negotiation, we made an offer. 3 days later, it was accepted. Thomas has sold some company shares earlier that year after an exceptionally good quarter, putting us in position to make the purchase without over-leveraging ourselves. "Consider it both a wedding venue and an investment," Thomas explained as we signed the final paperwork. "And a big middle finger to anyone who thought they could overshadow our day." I laughed and kissed him. I never thought property acquisition could be so romantic. We posted a few tasteful photos of the villa on social media, announcing it simply as our wedding venue without mentioning we'd purchased it. Within hours, my phone exploded with notifications. Stephanie called first, her voice sickly sweet. "Oh my God, Alex, that place is amazing. Where is it? How did you find it? It must have cost a fortune to rent." I answered her questions vaguely. uncomfortable with her sudden interest in our wedding plans after trying to sabotage them. Then came the real reason for her call. So I had this brilliant idea, she gushed. What if I moved my wedding to Italy too? We could do a double wedding. Wouldn't that be incredible? Same venue, same date, 2 ceremonies. I nearly dropped my phone in shock. You want to move your wedding to our venue? After insisting you couldn't possibly change the location from Tulsa? Well, when I saw how gorgeous it is, I just fell in love with it. She paused. Mom and Dad think it's a wonderful solution. They could attend both weddings and we could split the venue cost. Stephanie, that's not possible, I said firmly. We've already planned everything for our intimate ceremony. The venue can't accommodate 2 separate weddings on the same day. What I didn't tell her was that the venue was now our private home, and there was absolutely no way I would share my wedding day with her, especially after her manipulative behavior. The next call came from my mother, bypassing any congratulations on our beautiful venue and launching straight into pressure tactics. Alexandra, your sister is trying to find a compromise. The least you could do is consider it. This beautiful place you found looks like it could easily host 2 events. Do you really need the entire villa just for your small ceremony? Mom, we've made our plans. Our vendors are booked for specific spaces throughout the property. It's not logistically possible. You're being ridiculous, she snapped. This is just another example of you refusing to share the spotlight. The irony was almost laughable. The situation escalated when my father called Thomas directly, attempting to circumvent me. Be reasonable, son, he said in what Thomas later described as his business negotiation voice. You seem like a practical man. Surely you can see the sense in combining resources for these events. We're prepared to contribute to the rental cost. Thomas, bless him, was unflinchingly loyal. With all due respect, sir, this decision isn't up for negotiation. Alex and I have made our plans, and we're not changing them. And you should know that I support my fiancé 100%. My father's response was chilling. You might want to reconsider that position. Family relationships are important in business. You never know when you might need connections. Was that a threat? Thomas certainly thought so and immediately ended the call. That evening, we received a concerning message from Francesca. Someone claiming to be my mother had contacted the previous owners of the villa, asking detailed questions about the property, including whether it could be booked for events independent of the new owners. I informed them that the property has been sold and all inquiries should go through you, Francesca wrote. But I thought you should be aware. Thomas and I looked at each other in disbelief. The lengths my family was willing to go to get their way was astonishing. I think we need to be very careful about sharing details going forward, Thomas said grimly. They're not respecting any boundaries. I nodded in agreement, feeling a strange mix of sadness and resolve. They've shown us exactly who they are and where I stand in their priorities. I won't forget this. The betrayal stung, but it also clarified what I needed to do. From this point forward, information about our wedding would be on a strict need-to-know basis for my immediate family. They had forfeited the right to be included in our planning process. 3 months before our wedding date, the sabotage began in earnest. It started with a perplexing email from our caterer in Italy. We are sorry to hear you have canceled your event, the message read. As per our contract, the 50% deposit is non-refundable, but we have closed your file as requested. I immediately called the catering company, confusion and alarm growing. We absolutely did not cancel, I explained to the manager. There must be some mistake. After some back and forth, the truth emerged. Someone claiming to be me had emailed them requesting cancellation of services. Thankfully, the company had maintained the original contract information, and after verifying my identity, they reinstated our booking. But the caterer wasn't an isolated incident. Within the same week, our florist, photographer, and music ensemble all contacted us with similar messages about our supposed cancellations. This is deliberate sabotage, Thomas said, pacing our living room after we'd spent hours on international calls rectifying the situation. And I think we both know who's behind it. I didn't want to believe my sister would go this far, but the evidence was difficult to ignore. The final confirmation came when our wedding planner forwarded an email she'd received from Stephanie using an email address nearly identical to mine with just one character, different, stating that due to unforeseen circumstances, we were canceling all Italian vendors and would be bringing our own team from the States. The email asked the planner to please inform all the local vendors of these changes, effectively attempting to cancel all our bookings in one swoop. Thankfully, our planner was thorough enough to verify directly with me before taking any action. With undeniable evidence in hand, I confronted Stephanie via a conference call that included our parents. I wanted witnesses to this conversation. I have proof that you've been contacting our wedding vendors claiming to be me and canceling services, I said, my voice shaking with anger and hurt. What could possibly justify this behavior? There must be some misunderstanding, Stephanie stammered. Why would I do that? I forwarded the emails to everyone on the call. This isn't a misunderstanding. This is fraud and identity theft. You deliberately created an email address to impersonate me. The brief silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. Well, Stephanie finally said, her tone shifting from denial to justification. If you had been reasonable about sharing your venue, none of this would have happened. I was just trying to make you reconsider. I was stunned into momentary silence by her admission. Alexandra, my mother interjected, while Stephanie's approach may have been misguided, you need to understand how difficult this situation has been for her. Her heart was set on having her wedding at that beautiful villa. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My sister had committed actual fraud, potentially ruining our wedding, and my mother was defending her. Are you serious right now? Thomas interrupted, unable to contain his disbelief. Your daughter just admitted to deliberately sabotaging our wedding, and you're making excuses for her? My father cleared his throat. Let's not blow this out of proportion. No real harm was done since you caught it in time. Siblings have disagreements all the time. This isn't a disagreement, I said, finding my voice again. This is criminal behavior, and the fact that you're defending it tells me everything I need to know about where your loyalties lie. Don't be so dramatic, Stephanie scoffed. It was just a few emails. That could have resulted in us having no catering, flowers, music, or photography at our wedding, Thomas pointed out. If you think that's not real harm, I'd hate to see what you consider serious. The call ended with no real resolution. Stephanie offered a half-hearted, sorry you're upset, non-apology. My parents suggested we all take some time to cool off. No one acknowledged the gravity of what had happened. After hanging up, I broke down in Thomas's arms. How could they do this? How could they support her doing this? Thomas held me tightly. I don't know, love, but we're not going to let them ruin our day. True to his word, Thomas immediately took action. He hired Martina, a renowned wedding coordinator based in Florence with extensive connections throughout Tuscany. We explained the situation frankly, and she was appropriately horrified. This is unacceptable, she declared. Don't worry, I will personally contact all vendors to implement security protocols. Anything related to your wedding will require verification codes from now on. With Martina's help, we secured all our vendors and added backup options for critical elements like catering and photography. She even suggested hiring discreet security for the event, something we wouldn't have considered necessary for a wedding but now seemed prudent. As if the vendor sabotage wasn't enough, we soon discovered Stephanie had been spreading misinformation throughout the extended family. My cousin Erica called me, concerned. Alex, is everything okay with you and Thomas? I heard from Aunt Carol, who talked to your mom, that there might be problems between you two, and that's why the wedding plans keep changing. What? No, Thomas and I are solid. What exactly did you hear? What followed was a disturbing account of rumors being circulated, that Thomas and I were fighting constantly over wedding details, that we'd nearly broken up twice, that the Italy location was a last desperate attempt to save our relationship, and most infuriatingly, that Thomas had actually dated Stephanie first and I had stolen him away. That's completely false, I said, blood boiling. Thomas and I met at a finance conference in New York. He's never even spent time alone with Stephanie. They've met maybe 3 times, always in family settings. That's what I thought, Erica said. It didn't sound right to me, but Aunt Carol was so convincing. After that call, I discovered similar misinformation had been fed to multiple family members. Some relatives who had initially RSVP'd yes to our wedding were now declining, citing concerns about supporting a relationship with such a rocky foundation. The final straw came when Thomas received a visit from Stephanie at his office in San Francisco, completely unannounced. His assistant texted him that a woman claiming to be his future sister-in-law was insisting on seeing him about an urgent family matter. Thomas, suspicious but curious, agreed to a brief meeting. He later told me he'd had the foresight to record the conversation on his phone, legal in California with one-party consent. Stephanie had apparently spent the first few minutes making small talk before getting to her real agenda. Thomas, I'm here because I'm worried about Alex, she said, her voice dripping with manufactured concern. She's not been herself lately. This wedding obsession has turned her into someone I barely recognize. Alex is perfectly fine, Thomas responded coolly. She's justifiably upset about the attempts to sabotage our wedding, but otherwise, she's the same wonderful woman I fell in love with. That's just it, Stephanie pressed on. The Alex I know would never be so selfish. She would want to share her happiness. The fact that she's refusing to consider a double wedding at your beautiful venue shows something's wrong. When Thomas remained unmoved, she changed tactics. Look, I know about your previous relationship, she said cryptically. The one that ended badly just before you met Alex. I'd hate for that information to somehow come out during the wedding preparations and upset my sister. Thomas was momentarily stunned. He had indeed ended a 2-year relationship about 3 months before meeting me, but it had been a mutual, amicable parting with his ex moving to London for work. There was no scandal, no drama, and more importantly, I already knew all about it. Are you attempting to blackmail me with non-existent dirt about my past relationship? He asked incredulously. Stephanie backpedaled quickly. No, I'm just concerned about anything that might upset Alex. She's so fragile emotionally. Your sister is one of the strongest people I know, Thomas replied, and this conversation is over. When Thomas played the recording for me that evening, I experienced a complete emotional breakdown. The calculated manipulation, the lies, the attempt at blackmail, it was too much. I can't do this anymore, I sobbed. Maybe we should just elope, cancel everything, and disappear to a courthouse somewhere. Is that what you really want? Thomas asked gently. No, I admitted. I want our beautiful wedding at our beautiful home in Tuscany. I want to celebrate our love with people who genuinely care about us. Then that's exactly what we'll have, he promised. We won't let them take this from us. That night, lying awake after my tears had subsided, I made a decision. The emotional ties I'd spent a lifetime trying to strengthen with my family were clearly one-sided. I'd been seeking approval from people incapable of putting my happiness on equal footing with Stephanie's. It was time to accept that reality and move forward with people who truly valued me. We're going to have the wedding of our dreams, I whispered to Thomas in the darkness, and they're going to regret missing it for the rest of their lives. The 8 weeks leading up to our wedding were a blur of replanning and reinforcing security measures. Martina, our Italian wedding coordinator, proved worth every penny as she helped us rebuild our vendor relationships and implement verification systems to prevent further sabotage. We will create special passwords for all communications, she explained during a video call. And I personally know each vendor. No changes will be made without direct confirmation from me or you. The stress took its toll. I lost weight, developed insomnia, and found myself jumping every time my phone rang. Thomas insisted I see a therapist, which helped me process the complex emotions of essentially being disowned by my parents over a wedding date. What you're experiencing is family betrayal trauma, Dr. Peterson explained during our sessions. Your family's behavior has shattered your basic assumptions about your relationships with them. That's deeply destabilizing. While I worked on my mental health, Thomas's family stepped up in ways that brought tears to my eyes. His parents, Robert and Catherine Reynolds, had always been warm to me, but now they became rocks of support. Catherine called daily with genuine interest in wedding details. Robert used his connections to help with international banking logistics for our Italian payments. We want you to know that we consider you our daughter already, Catherine told me during a Sunday dinner at their home. Whatever happens with your parents, you have family who love you unconditionally. Thomas's sister Megan took an emergency week off from her medical residency to help me finalize details that normally a mother or sister might have assisted with. Screw them, she said bluntly as we selected table linens and finalized welcome basket contents for guests. If they can't see how amazing you are and how perfect you are for my brother, that's their massive loss. With 3 weeks to go, my mother made one last attempt at emotional manipulation. Her tearful phone call came late on a Tuesday evening. Alexandra, please reconsider the date, she begged, voice breaking. We're your parents. We should be at your wedding. Don't you want us there? Of course I want you there, Mom, I replied quietly. But not at the expense of everything Thomas and I have planned and paid for. You and Dad made your choice when you decided Stephanie's hastily planned wedding was more important than the one we announced 6 months earlier. But she's your sister! Can't you understand she's always dreamed of a June wedding? Funny how that dream conveniently appeared only after we announced our date, I observed. If it was so important to her, why didn't she mention it during the entire time we were planning? You've always been jealous of the attention she gets, my mother accused, switching tactics. I took a deep breath, Dr. Peterson's advice echoing in my mind. Set boundaries without engaging in circular arguments. Mom, I'm not having this conversation again. Our wedding is June 15th in Tuscany. You're welcome to attend. If you choose not to, that's your decision to live with. The next day, I received a cold email from my father. The formal tone suggested he'd written it at his office, probably between business meetings. Alexandra, your mother is extremely upset by your continued stubbornness. We have made our position clear. We cannot attend two weddings on opposite sides of the world on the same day, and as parents, we must prioritize. Stephanie needs our support more than you do. She always has. If you care about this family at all, you will reconsider your date. The email concluded with a businesslike regards, Dad. Not even love or his name, just Dad, as if reminding me of a relationship that his actions were actively destroying. I showed the email to Thomas without comment. He read it, jaw tightening. Forward this to Dr. Peterson, he suggested, and then let's focus on the people who are coming to celebrate with us. Taking his advice, I channeled my energy into creating the most amazing experience for our true supporters. We sent out formal invitations to extended family members on both sides, including beautiful professional photos of the villa and surrounding countryside. The response was unexpected. Several of my aunts, uncles, and cousins chose our wedding over Stephanie's, booking flights to Italy despite my parents' narrative. My mother's sister, Aunt Diana, was particularly supportive. Your mother is making a terrible mistake, she told me directly. I've watched this dynamic in your family for too long without saying anything. Not this time. William and I will be there to represent your side of the family. As RSVPs flowed in, it became clear that our wedding would be attended by about 30 guests, smaller than originally planned, but every single person coming was someone who truly cared about us. Thomas's family and our closest friends made up the majority, with a handful of my extended relatives rounding out the group. Stephanie's reaction to learning that some family members had chosen Tuscany over Tulsa was predictably dramatic. She called me in a rage one evening. "How dare you steal Aunt Diana and Uncle William from my wedding?" she shouted without preamble. "And cousins Jamie and Eric too? What did you say to them?" "I didn't say anything except the date, time, and location of our event," I replied calmly. "Adults can make their own decisions about which wedding they prefer to attend. You must have bribed them with that fancy villa and a free trip to Italy." I sighed. "Stephanie, guests are paying for their own flights and accommodations. We're only providing the venue, food, and drinks for the actual wedding." "Well, they should be at my wedding. I'm the baby of the family." The conversation deteriorated from there, with Stephanie threatening to make me sorry if I didn't convince our relatives to change their plans. I finally hung up when she became incoherent with rage. 2 days later, we received a troubling call from Francesca, our Italian property manager, who was overseeing the villa in the months before our arrival. "Signora Mitchell, I have received some strange inquiries about the property," she explained. "Someone claiming to represent an American wedding party has been asking if they can view the villa next week. They said they are friends of the owners." "We haven't authorized anyone to visit," I confirmed, alarm bells ringing. I thought as much. They were quite persistent, claiming they needed to assess the space for an event on June 15th. When I explained that the property is privately owned and not available for commercial events, they became angry. Thomas immediately contacted our Italian attorney, who advised strengthening security protocols at the property and ensuring all staff were aware that no one was permitted entry without our explicit authorization. We arrived in Tuscany 2 weeks before the wedding, partly to finalize arrangements and partly because we were concerned about potential interference. Thomas had hired a cybersecurity specialist to secure our email accounts and had all wedding communications moved to encrypted platforms. "It feels like we're planning a military operation instead of a wedding," I joked weakly as we landed in Florence. Thomas squeezed my hand. "The most beautiful military operation in history." Driving through the gates of our Tuscan villa for the first time as owners was a surreal experience. The property was even more breathtaking than we remembered, with late spring flowers blooming throughout the gardens and the grapevines beginning to flourish in the vineyard. "Welcome home," Thomas whispered, as we stood on the terrace overlooking the rolling hills. In that moment, despite everything, I knew we had made the right decision. No one could take this from us. Not my sister, not my parents, not anyone. The final week before our wedding brought an unexpected sense of calm. Our closest friends had arrived at the villa, filling the ancient stone walls with laughter and genuine excitement. Thomas's best friend Jack and his wife Emma took the guest house, while my best friend Lily and her husband Michael settled into one of the larger bedroom suites in the main villa. Together with 4 other couples who made up our inner circle, we spent days exploring the property, setting up decorations, and enjoying long dinners under the Tuscan stars. It felt like the destination wedding weekend we had always envisioned, extended into a full week of celebration with people who truly loved us. "This is magical," Lily sighed as we sat by the pool one evening, watching the sunset paint the cypress trees in gold. "I can't believe anyone would choose to miss this." I smiled, feeling a complex mixture of happiness and lingering sadness. Their loss. Thomas's sister Megan had taken charge of transforming the villa's central courtyard into our ceremony space, working alongside Martina to arrange rustic wooden chairs, design a floral arch, and string delicate lights from the ancient olive trees. "It's going to be the most beautiful wedding in the history of weddings," she declared, showing us the progress. Eat your heart out, Tulsa Country Club. While we focused on creating joyful memories, social media updates from relatives attending Stephanie's wedding began appearing on my feed. My cousin Erica, who had chosen Stephanie's event, posted photos of the rehearsal dinner at an upscale restaurant in Tulsa, family gathering to celebrate Stephanie and Brad, the Williams wedding family celebration, her caption read. The images showed my parents beaming beside Stephanie, who looked radiant in a white cocktail dress. My father had his arm around her shoulders, a proud smile I couldn't remember ever being directed at me. My mother was adjusting Stephanie's hair with the attentive care of someone focusing on their most precious treasure. I scrolled quickly past, not wanting to dampen my own happiness. But later that night, alone in our bedroom while Thomas was having a nightcap with his friends, I found myself looking at more photos that had been posted. The most painful one showed my parents presenting Stephanie with an ornate jewelry box. According to the caption, it contained my grandmother's diamond earrings, family heirlooms that had been promised to me since I was a teenager. My grandmother had specifically told me they would be mine on my wedding day as the eldest granddaughter. I closed the app, tears streaming down my face. The betrayal felt complete now. Not only had they chosen Stephanie's wedding over mine, they had given her what was meant to be my inheritance. I didn't tell Thomas about the earrings. Some hurts were too private, too deep to share even with him. Instead, I threw myself into our final wedding preparations with renewed determination to create perfect memories that needed no family validation. The following morning brought news that Stephanie had moved her ceremony earlier on our shared wedding day, specifically to be the first Mitchell daughter to get married, according to my cousin Jamie's text message. She's insisting everyone be at the country club by 10 a.m. so she can say her vows at exactly noon. She keeps saying she wants to be a wife before Alex, even if it's just by a few hours. I laughed out loud at the absurdity of it. "She's welcome to the title," I told Jamie. "I'm more interested in the marriage than the wedding anyway." Throughout the day, more photos appeared of extravagant gifts my parents had lavished on Stephanie. A check for a house down payment presented at the bridal luncheon, matching Cartier watches for the couple, a honeymoon to Bora Bora fully funded by my father. "Don't look at that stuff," Thomas advised, gently taking my phone. "It only hurts you." "I know," I admitted. "It's like picking at a scab." "Well, I have something that might cheer you up," he said mysteriously. "Your wedding gift is being delivered tomorrow." Before I could press him for details, we were interrupted by the arrival of Jack, Thomas's best man, who had an unusually serious expression on his face. "Can I talk to you both privately?" he asked. We moved to the villa's library, closing the heavy wooden door behind us. "I wasn't sure whether to tell you this," Jack began, "but I figured you should be prepared. I have a friend who works at the same consulting firm as Brad's brother. He overheard something concerning." My stomach tightened with dread. "Apparently Stephanie has been telling people that she and your parents are planning to come here after their wedding. She's booked flights for the 3 of them to Florence, arriving early morning on your wedding day." Thomas's face hardened. "What exactly is she planning?" "From what my friend gathered, they want to make a grand entrance during your ceremony, supposedly to reconcile and join the celebrations." Brad's brother was asking advice on whether he should try to talk Brad out of letting Stephanie go through with it. I felt simultaneously nauseous and furious. They want to hijack our wedding. After everything, they still think they can control the narrative. Thomas was already on his phone, texting our security team. We had hired 2 professionally trained security consultants who specialized in high-profile events, primarily as a precaution against paparazzi or wedding crashers attracted by the luxury venue. Now their services would be needed for a much more personal threat. I am implementing Protocol B, Thomas informed them. Priority is maintaining ceremony, security, and privacy. No admittance without explicit clearance from myself or Alex. Jack looked apologetic. I'm sorry to bring this news, I just thought you should know. No, you absolutely did the right thing, I assured him. Better to be prepared than ambushed. That evening, we gathered our closest friends and explained the situation. Everyone was appropriately outraged on our behalf and immediately volunteered to help in any way needed. I'll be on Stephanie watch at the entrance, Lily declared. She'll have to get through me first, and I still haven't forgotten how she accidentally spilled red wine on my white dress at your engagement party. Emma, Jack's wife and a former event coordinator, suggested we create a detailed timeline for the day with specific security positions at potential entry points. We'll have a code word system, she explained. If anyone spots them trying to enter, they send a text with the word sunflower to the group, and security will handle it immediately. The night before our wedding, I struggled to sleep despite exhaustion. The excitement of our approaching ceremony competed with anxiety about potential disruptions. Around midnight, I slipped out of bed, careful not to wake Thomas, and made my way to the terrace. The Tuscan night was clear and cool, stars scattered like diamonds across the black sky. The scent of jasmine and lavender drifted from the gardens below. In the distance, the lights of a small village twinkled on a neighboring hillside. Couldn't sleep? I turned to find Megan, Thomas's sister, approaching with 2 glasses of wine. Too many thoughts, I admitted, accepting the offer glass. About tomorrow? Or about them? She asked perceptively. Both. I keep oscillating between excitement and dread. She leaned against the stone balustrade beside me. You know, when Thomas first told us about you, he said something I'll never forget. He said, she's the strongest person I've ever met, but she doesn't even realize it. I looked at her, surprised. He was right, she continued. Most people would have broken under the kind of family dynamics you've endured. Instead, you built a successful career, maintained your integrity, and found real love. That's extraordinary. It doesn't feel extraordinary, I said softly. Sometimes it just feels lonely. Well, starting tomorrow, you're officially part of our family. And Reynolds women don't take any shit. She clinked her glass against mine. So get some sleep. Because whatever happens tomorrow, you're going to face it as my sister, and we've got your back. Her words were exactly what I needed to hear. I returned to bed and finally drifted off to sleep, comforted by the knowledge that while I might have lost my family of origin, I had found a family of choice who loved me unconditionally. The morning of our wedding dawned with that perfect Tuscan light that painters have tried to capture for centuries, golden, warm, and somehow both soft and brilliant at the same time. I awoke to find Thomas already gone from our bed, but he had left something in his place, a small blue box with a handwritten letter propped against it. My dearest Alex, by tradition, we shouldn't see each other until the ceremony, so I've escaped to the guest house with Jack. But I couldn't start this day without telling you what you mean to me. When I first saw you at that conference in New York, so confident and brilliant, I knew you were special. What I didn't know then was how your strength would inspire me, how your kindness would humble me, and how your love would transform me. Today, in front of our true family, the people who choose to love and support us, I will promise to stand by you for all our days. But I want you to know that my commitment to you began long before today and will continue long after the vows are spoken. Inside this box is your wedding gift, something I've been working on for months. I hope it symbolizes what I want our life together to be, built on honesty, filled with adventure, and secure in the knowledge that home is wherever we are together. All my love, Thomas. With trembling fingers, I opened the blue box to find a key with a small silver olive branch charm attached to it. Beneath the key was a deed. Thomas had officially transferred ownership of the Tuscan villa to both our names. What had started as his purchase was now legally ours together. Tears blurred my vision as Lily knocked and entered with a breakfast tray. No crying yet, she scolded playfully. You'll be puffy in the photos. Happy tears, I assured her, showing her the deed and letter. That man, she sighed, setting an impossible standard for husbands everywhere. The next few hours passed in a whirlwind of preparations. Our small but mighty glam squad, a local hairstylist and makeup artist Martina, had recommended work their magic while champagne flowed freely. Thomas's mother Catherine joined us, bringing a pair of sapphire earrings. Something borrowed in blue, she explained, helping me put them on. They were my grandmother's and I wore them at my wedding to Robert. I hope they bring you the same happiness. The gesture brought fresh tears to my eyes. These weren't family heirlooms given out of obligation, but a heartfelt inclusion in a new family's traditions. Around noon, just as I was stepping into my dress, a sleek, modern column of Italian silk with delicate beadwork, Lily's phone buzzed with a security update. "Don't panic," she said carefully, "but they've been spotted." My heart raced. Who? Where? Stephanie, your mom, and your dad. They checked into the hotel in the village about an hour ago. One of the security guys recognized them from the photos we provided. I took a deep breath. Have they tried to come here? Not yet. Security is monitoring the situation. Thomas has been informed. I nodded, focusing on staying calm. The ceremony isn't until 4. Let's just continue as planned. Catherine squeezed my hand supportively. Nothing will ruin this day. As the afternoon progressed, I refused to let anxiety overshadow my happiness. My hair was styled in loose waves with small white flowers tucked throughout. My makeup natural but glowing. And when I finally looked in the full-length mirror, I hardly recognized myself. Not because of the dress or the professional styling, but because of the quiet confidence radiating from within. This was my day. No one could take it from me. At 3:30, I received a text from Thomas. All secure. I can't wait to see you. I love you. Those simple words centered me completely. At precisely 4 o'clock, Mendelssohn's Wedding March began playing as performed by our string quartet. I descended the ancient stone staircase of the villa to the courtyard where 30 of our dearest friends and family awaited. The setting was breathtaking. Flowers everywhere, twinkling lights strung between olive trees, and at the end of the aisle Thomas, looking devastatingly handsome in his tailored suit. His face when he saw me is something I'll remember until my dying day, a mixture of awe, love, and absolute certainty. In that moment, nothing else mattered. Not the empty chairs where my parents should have been, not the drama of the past months, nothing but the two of us and the life we were choosing together. Our officiant, a local magistrate who spoke charmingly accented English, guided us through a ceremony that was both traditional and uniquely ours. We had written our own vows, and Thomas's brought fresh tears to my eyes. Alexandra, he began, I promise to be your partner and equal in all things, to celebrate your successes as my own, to stand between you and anyone who would diminish your light, to create a home wherever we are together, and to choose you every day for the rest of our lives. When it was my turn, my voice shook only slightly. Thomas, I promise to bring my whole self to our marriage, my strengths and vulnerabilities alike, to build a family based on mutual respect and unconditional love, to create new traditions that honor our past while embracing our future, and to choose joy, choose gratitude, and choose you every single day. The exchange of rings, the pronouncement of our marriage, and our first kiss as husband and wife all passed in a blur of overwhelming happiness. As we turned to face our cheering guests, I felt a profound sense of peace. We had done it. Despite everything, we had created something beautiful and true. The reception began with cocktails in the garden, followed by dinner under the stars at long tables set up on the lawn. Fairy lights twinkled overhead, and the scent of roses and jasmine perfumed the air. It was magical in every sense of the word. We were just about to have our first dance when a commotion erupted at the entrance to the garden. Lily caught my eye and mouthed sunflower, our code word. Thomas squeezed my hand reassuringly as Jack approached to whisper in his ear. I couldn't hear what was said, but Thomas nodded and quietly slipped away toward the disturbance, signaling me to stay with our guests. I continued chatting with Thomas's aunt and uncle, trying to appear normal while my heart hammered in my chest. 5 minutes later, Thomas returned, his expression unreadable. Everything okay? I asked quietly. Handled, he replied, kissing my temple. Let's dance. It wasn't until later that night, after the cake had been cut, the toasts given, and many dances enjoyed, that Thomas told me what had happened. Stephanie, wearing what appeared to be her own wedding dress, had attempted to enter during our first dance, my parents trailing behind her. Security had stopped them at the gate, But Stephanie had become hysterical, demanding to be let in. "We're her family," my mother had apparently cried. "We have a right to be here." Thomas had gone to speak with them directly, accompanied by security and his father. I told them very clearly that while we would have welcomed them as invited guests, they had chosen not to attend and were now trespassing on private property, Thomas explained. "Your father tried to argue that as your parents, they had every right to be at your wedding. What did you say?" I asked. Thomas's expression was grim but satisfied. I said that family is defined by love and respect, not blood, that they had multiple opportunities to support you and chose not to, and that if they didn't leave immediately, we would involve the local authorities. And Stephanie? She called me several creative names and accused me of brainwashing you against your family. I didn't engage with that. I simply told them all that they had made their choice, and now they needed to live with it. Did they leave? Eventually. Your father finally realized they had no leverage and practically dragged Stephanie away. She was still shouting as they drove off. I should have felt upset, but instead, a strange sense of closure washed over me. "Thank you for protecting our day." "Always," he promised, pulling me close as the band played one last slow song. The celebration continued late into the night, everyone seemingly determined to make this the most joyful wedding in history. And despite the confrontation, or perhaps because it had been resolved so definitively, it truly was. As our guests finally retired to their rooms or nearby accommodations, Thomas and I found ourselves alone on the terrace, overlooking the moonlit Tuscan countryside. "Mrs. Reynolds," he said softly, "how does it feel?" I smiled up at my husband. "Like we've won, not just today, but the future." "That's because we have," he replied, kissing me under the Italian stars. Our honeymoon along Italy's Amalfi Coast was a blissful escape from family drama, 10 days of crystal clear Mediterranean waters, picturesque cliffside villages, and the kind of uninterrupted togetherness that solidifies a marriage from its earliest days. We deliberately disconnected from social media and emails, creating a protective bubble around our newlywed happiness. Should we just stay here forever? I joked as we shared breakfast on our hotel balcony in Positano, the colorful buildings cascading down to the sea below us. Thomas smiled. Tempting. But we have a whole life to build together, and a Tuscan villa waiting for our return. Reality crashed back the moment we reconnected to Wi-Fi at the airport for our flight home. My phone nearly exploded with notifications, missed calls from relatives, concerned text messages from friends, and dozens of social media alerts. "What on earth?" I murmured, scrolling through the barrage of communications. Thomas leaned over to look at my screen, his expression darkening. "It seems your sister has been busy." While we had been honeymooning, Stephanie had launched what could only be described as a coordinated social media smear campaign. She had posted multiple tearful videos and lengthy posts detailing how her selfish sister had banned family from her wedding and broke our parents' hearts with her cruel and vindictive behavior. The narrative she constructed was so far from reality, it would have been laughable if it weren't so damaging. According to Stephanie, I had deliberately chosen her wedding date to overshadow her special day, purchased the Tuscan villa purely out of spite, and then hired security guards to physically remove my loving parents when they tried to reconcile at my ceremony. "This is insane," I whispered as we scrolled through her posts. "She's completely twisted everything." What was most disturbing was how many mutual acquaintances and extended family members were commenting with support for Stephanie and condemnation of me. "I always knew Alexandra was cold, but this is beyond heartless," wrote a second cousin I'd met perhaps twice in my life. "Family should always come first. Shame on her," posted my mother's bridge partner of 20 years. Even more concerning were the comments from people I didn't recognize at all. Friends of Stephanie's who now felt entitled to weigh in on family matters they knew nothing about. "Some people don't deserve loving parents," wrote one such stranger. Thomas put his arm around me protectively as we waited to board our flight. "Don't engage with any of this right now. We'll figure out how to address it when we're home." The situation had only escalated by the time we returned to San Francisco. Now, the extended family was clearly divided into two camps: those who believed Stephanie's fabricated version of events, and those who had either attended our wedding or knew us well enough to recognize the manipulation at play. After much discussion with Thomas and advice from both our therapist and a reputation management consultant, I decided to post a single, factual statement on my own social media to address recent mischaracterizations of our wedding. Thomas and I announced our June 15th date 6 months in advance. We invited all family members, including my parents and sister. When Stephanie later scheduled her wedding for the same date, we kept our plans as arranged. While we're disappointed that some family members chose not to attend, we respect their decision and had a beautiful celebration with those who did join us. We wish Stephanie and Brad happiness in their marriage and asked for privacy as we began our own. I included a single photo of Thomas and me at our ceremony, radiant, surrounded by loved ones, and clearly without malice. The response was immediate and polarized. Those who knew the truth applauded my restraint and dignity. Stephanie's supporters doubled down, accusing me of passive-aggressive behavior and playing the victim. My Aunt Diana called me directly. "Don't let them gaslight you, Alexandra. Those of us who have watched this dynamic play out for years know exactly what's happening." While the social media war continued to simmer, a more concrete attack emerged. Thomas's business began receiving suspicious one-star reviews online. Dozens appeared overnight, all with similar wording, claiming his company had engaged in unethical practices or delivered substandard results. "This isn't coincidence," Thomas said grimly, showing me the pattern of reviews. "These are coordinated." His IT security team quickly traced several of the reviews to IP addresses associated with my parents' home network and Stephanie's apartment complex. Others came from accounts newly created by my father's administrative assistant and several of my mother's close friends. More disturbingly, Thomas discovered that my father had been making inquiries with business contacts about Thomas's company, subtly suggesting there might be concerns about its financial stability. "He's trying to damage my professional reputation," Thomas realized. "This goes beyond family drama. This is attempting to impact our livelihood." Our attorney advised immediate action. We sent formal cease and desist letters to my parents and Stephanie, outlining the evidence we had gathered and warning of potential legal consequences if the defamation continued. The response came not from them directly, but from my father's corporate attorney, a terse message suggesting that family matters should remain private and containing a thinly veiled threat. "Consider carefully the long-term repercussions of escalating this situation further. Family relationships have value beyond measure, and Mr. Mitchell would hate to see his daughter permanently damage her future inheritance prospects over a temporary disagreement." Thomas was incensed. "They're threatening to disinherit you if we don't let them get away with actively trying to harm us? That's beyond manipulation. It's extortion." I felt strangely calm. They've been using inheritance as a control mechanism my entire life. The difference is that now I don't need their money. Still, the implication troubled me enough that I asked our attorney to make discreet inquiries. What we discovered was shocking. My parents had already changed their will shortly after our wedding. Stephanie was now their sole heir, with a specific clause stating that I would receive nothing due to irreconcilable differences in family values. Even more hurtful was the discovery that my family home, where I had grown up, where my earliest memories were formed, had been transferred into Stephanie's name alone. The property that had been in our family for 3 generations would never be part of my heritage. As if to twist the knife further, Stephanie sent me a gloating text the day after we received this information. "Guess who owns the house now? Don't worry about coming home for Christmas. You're not invited anyway." I stared at the message for a long time before showing it to Thomas. He read it, his expression a mixture of anger and sadness. "They've shown you who they are," he said gently. "Maybe it's time to believe them." That night, we had a long conversation about our future, about building our own legacy rather than hoping for scraps of approval from people who had consistently demonstrated their conditional love. "Your parents chose Stephanie's wedding over yours," Thomas summarized. "They chose her feelings over yours your entire life. They've now chosen to give her your inheritance. But we get to choose too, Alex. We get to choose what kind of family we want to build. We get to choose who has access to our lives and our future children's lives." I nodded, tears streaming down my face. Not from sadness now, but from the cathartic release of finally fully accepting a truth I had been fighting for 32 years. "I choose us," I said firmly. "I choose happiness. I choose people who love without conditions and support without manipulation." Thomas pulled me into his arms. "Then that's what we'll build together, a legacy of our own." 1 year after our Tuscan wedding, Thomas and I hosted a summer solstice celebration at our villa. The guest list included those who had stood by us through everything: Thomas's family, our loyal friends, and the handful of relatives who had recognized the toxic dynamics at play and chosen to maintain relationships with us despite the family schism. The terrace was decorated with fairy lights and flowers, long tables set for an alfresco dinner as the sun set over the vineyards. Our first year, as property owners, had been productive. The villa's ancient wine cellar had been restored, and we were serving our first modest vintage to appreciative guests. "I'd like to make an announcement," I said, standing to address our gathered loved ones as dessert was being served. All eyes turned to me expectantly. I reached for Thomas's hand. "We wanted to share with you all first, our chosen family, that we're expecting a baby in January." The terrace erupted in cheers and congratulations. Thomas's mother Catherine burst into happy tears, while his father Robert beamed with pride. Our friends rushed to embrace us, and the celebration took on an even more joyful atmosphere. Later, as guests mingled and enjoyed the evening, I found a quiet moment alone with Thomas on a secluded part of the terrace. "Are you happy?" he asked, his hand resting protectively over my still flat stomach. "Completely," I answered honestly. "I've been thinking a lot about family lately, what it means, how it shapes us. I spent so many years trying to earn love that should have been freely given. I won't make that mistake with our child. Our baby is going to be surrounded by so much genuine love," Thomas promised. "Not the conditional kind that comes with expectations and manipulation, but the real kind that supports and celebrates." The past year had been a journey of healing for me. Dr. Peterson had continued to help me process the complex grief of family estrangement. "Because it was grief," she explained, "even when the separation was necessary and healthy. You're mourning the family you deserved but never had," she had told me during one particularly difficult session. "That's a legitimate loss." Unexpected support had come in the form of a letter from my Aunt Diana a few months after our wedding. It arrived at our San Francisco home, a thick envelope containing several handwritten pages. "I've watched the dynamic between your parents and their daughters my entire adult life," she wrote. "What you might not know is that similar patterns existed in our childhood home. Your mother was the favorite child, while I was perpetually in her shadow. The difference is that I allowed it to define me for decades, always seeking approval I never received. You broke free and created your own happiness. I admire your courage more than I can express." The letter went on to detail how she had maintained a relationship with my mother despite the pain it often caused her. "Family obligation is a powerful force," she explained. "But I'm learning from your example that blood doesn't automatically entitle people to a place in your life. Respect and genuine care must flow in both directions." Diana's letter opened the door to deeper connections with several family members who recognized the toxic patterns at play. My cousin Jamie began visiting us regularly, both in San Francisco and Tuscany. Two of my father's siblings, who had observed his preferential treatment of Stephanie throughout our childhood with mounting concern, reached out to establish independent relationships with me. Perhaps most surprisingly, Thomas's parents had embraced me as a daughter with an enthusiasm and warmth that initially felt almost overwhelming. Catherine called regularly just to chat. Robert sent articles he thought would interest me professionally. They both treated me with the kind of unconditional positive regard I had never experienced from my own parents. "You don't need to earn our love, Alexandra," Catherine had told me once, when I thanked her profusely for some small kindness. "That's not how family is supposed to work." We had created new traditions over the past year: Thanksgiving in San Francisco, Christmas in Tuscany, summer split between both homes. Our circle of genuine connections had grown stronger and deeper, reinforcing that family was defined by love, not DNA. There had been attempts at reconciliation, though not from the sources I might have hoped for. 6 months after our wedding, Stephanie's marriage to Brad had begun showing signs of strain. According to Jamie, who still maintained contact with her, Brad had grown tired of the constant drama and Stephanie's obsession with competing with me. Stephanie had reached out with a text that could generously be described as a quasi-apology. "I may have overreacted about some wedding stuff. We should talk sometime." I had responded carefully, setting clear boundaries. "I'm open to a conversation when you're ready to acknowledge what actually happened and take responsibility for your actions and words. Until then, I'm focusing on building a healthy life with people who respect me." She had not replied, but I had heard through the family grapevine that she and Brad were now in counseling, trying to save their marriage. My parents remained entrenched in their position. My mother had sent a birthday card, the first communication in months, with a brief note suggesting I should let bygones be bygones and remember the importance of family without any acknowledgement of their behavior or the pain they had. Cost. I had not responded. As Dr. Peterson had helped me understand, reconciliation without accountability only enables further harm. I had left the door slightly ajar, not locked and barricaded, but certainly not wide open for more mistreatment. The profound peace I had found in establishing healthy boundaries surprised me. Rather than the guilt or regret I had feared, I felt lighter, more authentic, and increasingly confident in my own worth independent of parental validation. Now, with a baby on the way, I was even more committed to breaking generational patterns of conditional love and favoritism. Our child would never question their place in our hearts or have to earn their belonging. As the celebration continued around us, Thomas raised his glass in a private toast. To building something better, he said softly. I clinked my water glass against his wine, to chosen family, and to our child, who will never doubt they are enough, exactly as they are. The Tuscan stars twinkled overhead, the same stars that had witnessed our wedding vows a year earlier. The villa that had been intended as a stunning backdrop for one perfect day had become something far more significant, a true home, a sanctuary, and the foundation of our chosen family's future. As I looked around at the joyful faces of those who had proven their love through actions rather than mere biology, I felt a profound gratitude. My parents had indeed chosen my sister's wedding over mine. In doing so, they had inadvertently given me the freedom to choose authentic happiness over the endless pursuit of their approval. Sometimes the family you create matters more than the family you're born into. Sometimes the rejection becomes a redirection to something far better than you ever imagined possible. If you've ever had to create boundaries with toxic family members, I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. Have you found your chosen family? How did you navigate the complex emotions of family estrangement? Remember to like this video if it resonated with you, subscribe for more real-life stories, and share with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to choose their own happiness. Thank you for witnessing my journey, and I wish you all the strength to create the family you deserve, whether by blood or by choice.